Hey, friends, if you've listened to the podcast, you know that Clutter Free Academy is now listener supported. What does that mean? It means that we don't accept outside advertisements. We don't accept outside sponsorships. That doesn't mean we're never going to do it. It just means we're not doing it right now because we want to have control over what your ears hear. And here we are. So if you listen to the podcast, thank you. If you share the podcast, thank you. And if you're one of our financial supporters, whether it was a one-time gift or you're doing $5 a month, we have some people doing $25 a month, and we are so grateful because it means we can continue with the podcast. So if you're interested, you can go to the show notes and find our link there, or you can go to Kathi, that's Kathi .link/coffee. That's Kathi.link/coffee. And just thank you guys. We are so grateful for each and every one of you here. Okay, on with the show. Well, hey friends, welcome to Clutter Free Academy, where our goal is to help you take small, doable steps to live every day with less clutter and more life. And guys, one of my favorite things, especially over on Facebook, is that you send me questions. And by the way, you can always send questions here to the podcast. You can just go to info@kathylip.com. But also, if you submit something over there, every once in a while we ask, hey, does anybody have any questions? And one of the ones that we got recently was about routines. And how do you keep a routine going so that you can stay more clutter free, stay on top of meal prep, stay on top of the joy in your life when every day feels different? When maybe you have a different schedule, maybe you work in a hospital or some other kind of first responder, maybe your spouse has a different schedule all the time. Maybe there are multiple kids in your house or you're taking care of grandkids. There could be a million different reasons. Well, guys, I've got the expert here. She didn't know that she was the expert on winning the battle of overwhelm when every day is different, but I did. I knew she was. Guys, it is my friend Barb Roos. You have heard her on the podcast before. She has a great book, Stronger Than Stress, which is a Bible study that walks readers through 10 spiritual practices to win the battle of overwhelm. And this is a woman who every day is a different thing. It just is. So Barb, welcome back to the podcast. I always love talking. I love talking to you so much that before we even got on here, we had an hour discussion just catching up on real life because I always learn something from you. And I know today is not going to be any different. Welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, Kathi, I am so grateful and honored to be back. I'm so glad we got to catch up, but I love visiting with you and everyone who's listening.
Yeah, we get such great responses to your podcast. And so I want to talk about our listeners because whether they're caregivers, ministry wives, entrepreneurs, moms, grandmothers, for many of them, no 2 days look the same. And that is a lot of outside stuff coming in. Uh, wh- I wonder, what does that unpredictability actually do to us emotionally and spiritually?
The tough part about uncertainty is that when we do not feel like we have control in our circumstances, what we will then try to do is we will try to look for where that control is at.
Mm.
If we are caregiving for someone, if our kids are waking up early, if we've got teenagers that are off the hook, what we are looking for is how do we steady the ship inside of our heart? That
Mhm.
is natural. You're not crazy if you're craving certainty and consistency. The problem comes in is how we are trying to manufacture it. And what I have found in
Mm.
my experience and the experience when I'm talking with women at events or writing in my Happy Monday devotion is we then try to fix and force solutions in other people's lives. And the
Ooh.
problem with that is instead of creating solutions, we actually end up creating more chaos.
Y- Can Okay, I love this so much. And by the way, guys, we will have a link to subscribe to Happy Monday because that is something that you will want in your inbox. But I also want to say this. Uh, can we just acknowledge that life is harder for that person who has a constantly shifting schedule or responsibilities? I just want to validate our listeners and also to say that control issue can be really, really tough. And by the way, I I think having control is not a bad thing, but needing control over others to experience peace is never going to be a winning strategy, right? It's not possible. So what do you do with those feelings of needing to have control? Where do you put those? Wait, you know what? Before we do that, I want people to hear from you. When I said you're the perfect expert to come on and talk about this, you have you play a lot of different roles in your life. So could you just give us a list of some of those roles? Because I know like lots of times I'm talking to you, you're sitting in an airport somewhere or you're speaking at a conference like you've got a lot going on. Can you just tell us some of those roles?
Truly. And I do want to second the validation.
Yeah,
The If you are coming and you're listening today and your life is spinning out of control and they are circumstances that you did not cause, you can't change. Like Kathy and I, we are both here for with a compassionate conversation.
absolutely.
Absolutely. And so for me, I am a full time speaker and author. So that means that I love traveling. I love helping women learn how to overcome overwhelm, deal with stress, handle worry and anxiety, and find peace. In the places where life is crazy. I am also a literary agent, so I help others reach their publishing dreams. And outside of work, I am a mom of 3 adult kids, and I spent a very long season, almost a decade, as a spouse who lived with someone who was struggling with alcohol addiction. That for me was where a lot of part of this conversation we're going to have, that's where um, a place where God had to meet me because everyday life was so much out of control and I couldn't change anything. And so the conversation that you and I want to have is, what does it look like to find peace in those places?
And that's what thank you for saying that because if I was also a single mom, a lot of things were out of my control at that point, but I have to imagine living with somebody with addiction is the ultimate no control and no stability. No uh both of us, especially Barb, are coming from these places of that craving to be able to have stability and safety for yourself and your kids and not being able to achieve that can feel very disconcerting. But let's talk about it from a just managing life space right now, because a lot of organizing advice assumes you have a consistent schedule. Like,
Mhm.
what do you say? You're doing laundry on this day and you're running kids to soccer practice on this day. And for some of us, that's just not a reality. What do you say to people who feel like they can never get on top of their life because their life just isn't predictable?
So this is where I talk about my top 5. So I'm gonna
Okay.
share what has what has been the great equalizer for me in my life over the last 15 years. So I made a promise to myself that it actually is based off of in there's ancient wisdom, Jesus. So we're going to just involve just a little scripture here, but there's a point at which Jesus says, if you are faithful with the small things,
Mm.
then that will help you be faithful with the bigger things. Now, he's talking about it from a spiritual perspective, but I extrapolated this out to real life. If I take care of the small things, that will give me the resources I need to take care of the big things. So, Kathy, I developed a list of 5 things a decade ago, and these are the only 5 things I must do per day. And what I've learned is that when I do those 5 things every day, somehow, some way in how life works out, I am actually able to get to the other things. So those
Whew.
5 things are I prioritize getting a good night's sleep every night. I
Mhm.
move my body. That doesn't mean that I stick to a specific workout. It doesn't mean that I am militant about the amount of minutes I do. I just move my body. I make healthy food choices. I spend time with God. It's not a certain amount of time. It's not a certain thing I do, but it's quality time with God. And I make sure that I have at least one quality connection every day. That's my
Mm.
top 5. And
Oof.
there is something that happens inside of me when I know that I am taking care of myself. One of the things that I say, 2 things that I say in the Stronger Than Stress book. The first is that we cannot be everything to everybody.
Amen.
And part of what happens is when we're trying to be everything to everyone, we drain ourselves. And the
Mhm.
second is that God's plan for us was never to set ourselves on fire to keep everyone else warm. That leads to
Yes.
the people-pleasing end of things. So when you and I are really looking at our lives, when we really inventory where we're spending our time, there's a pretty good chunk of time that we are either trying to be everything to everyone or we are setting ourselves on fire. So what
Mhm.
my challenge was and what my spiritual journey was to just to go to discern and go, where do I need to pull back? And when I do those top 5, I have the clarity and the energy and the wisdom to be able to go, okay, what must be done? There are some unpleasant things in my life that I just have to lean into. When
Yeah.
my aunt, I almost lost my aunt last month. And so I had to live at the
Mm.
Cleveland Clinic for a few days. And so she was in the ICU on a ventilator. Our lives were topsy turvy while we were waiting to find out if she was going to survive. Life was just pure chaos and high emotion.
Yeah.
And I had to just sit there and go, I'm sleeping in hospital waiting rooms. It is completely
Mhm.
uncomfortable. I don't have regular meal times. But that top 5 gave me an anchor. And so I went, okay, what's the maximum amount of sleep that I could do? So I had a conversation with everybody that was there with me. And I just said, hey guys, how do we work this out so we can get some sleep? Next
Mhm.
was food. I had a Starbucks available and the cafeteria available, and so I had to make the best choices I had in there. Next was moving my body. I couldn't do a full out workout in the hospital, but I could
Right.
walk laps downstairs
Mhm.
when I had a reprieve from sitting next to her bed. I could take time to pray, and we were able to have meeting. And so even when life was out of control, those 5 things every morning, I could wake up and I go, "How can I do the best with those 5 things?" And mind you, Kathi, I was still under a book contract.
Of course you were. Of course you were.
Still under a book contract. I couldn't do any writing, but because I was able to make those 5, and this doesn't make me a hero, I'm just explaining kinda how I was able, those
Yeah.
gave me an anchor so that when I did get back home after a week, I had a lot of emotional things that I had to sort through, but I
Mhm.
wasn't so off in Saturn and Neptune in the universe.
Right.
I was able to work my way back to emotional stability because physically, I made sure not to let myself spin out too far.
Mm. I love this so much, and I wanna revisit it. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, Barb, I want you to talk to the woman who just feels so buried. Like, she's like, "I can't even decide between the 5 I'm spending." I want you to talk about first steps. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll come right back. Friend, if you are not receiving my newsletter, Kathy Lips Clutter Free Academy newsletter, I want you to go to the show notes and sign up because this is where we continue the conversation. This is where we have resources for you about, what you're listening to today and practical applications. We want you to take the next step in your journey. So go to the show notes, sign up for our newsletter, and start receiving that encouragement in your inbox every single week. Okay, Barb. We've got people who are listening. Their houses are in chaos. Their spouse, they're struggling with their spouse. Their
Mm,
kids may be living off the hook right now. Work is depressed. Like, there are so many different things. And here's what I know: any one of those things can weigh down your entire life.
yeah.
It can be exhausting. So what do you say? What's the first step for the woman who just feels completely overwhelmed?
So this is where I would say make sure you do one thing for yourself each day. And that one thing can either look like taking a 10-minute walk, it can look like going to bed 10 minutes early, it
Mhm.
can look like phoning a friend. For me, many, many years ago when this journey started, honestly, it started with putting on a pair of earrings. I was in a
Tell me more
very
about that.
I was in a very this was actually it was 2003. I was
Okay.
in a season that I nicknamed the dark years.
Mhm,
Everything was off the hook. And my
mhm.
sweet friend Cindy, who I still meet with every other Wednesday for an hour, she just said one day, she goes, "I put on a pair of earrings every day, so it's one thing that I know that I did to take care of myself." And one day I woke
Ooh.
up, I looked in my jewelry box because I hadn't looked in there in a while. I
Mhm.
scraped out a pair of old crusty earrings and washed them off, and I popped them in my ears, and there was something inside of me that came alive because I had done one thing for myself, because I had gotten lost in the menagerie of
Yeah,
everything that was spinning around me. And so
yeah.
to my sweet friend who is listening, and you're like, Everything. It's either on fire, it's a tornado, it's going down the drain." Do one thing for yourself. Years later, when we were in our family addiction crisis, the one thing that I started doing for myself was I started taking a walk every day. I put earbuds in and I would just take one walk every day. And there was
Mm,
something when I laid down in the bed at night that in the midst of everything that was so lost and broken around me, I just went, but I made a choice to take care of me, and it did something for my soul that I could build upon.
yeah. Uh, Barb, you and I met, I'm thinking somewhere around 2008 to 10. I think
Mhm.
somewhere around there.
It
And
was a
it
little bit later. It was a
oh,
little
was it?
bit yeah, it was a little
Okay.
bit later. It was, I think it was around 2013-ish, because that's when I
Oh,
got my book
really?
contract. Yeah, it was just a little bit later
Oh,
after that.
okay. I thought it was
Yeah.
earlier in our journey. Okay.
Because you
So
have been taking care of me for a long time, friend.
well, the first time I met you, I just thought, "Oh my goodness, she's gorgeous," right? And since I've known you, um, what I have seen is the light inside of you coming out. And I
Mm,
didn't notice that when I first met you, and because you were in the pit, right? You were absolutely in the pit when I first met you. And you were gorgeous then, and now, and you guys know that I don't care what my friends look like, but it's hard to ignore when somebody's absolutely stunning. And, but the inside light is now outside.
yeah.
And because I know your light was dimmed for a long time. And so when you guys hear what she is saying, let's just say Barb has been in recovery for a while, and it's made a difference in every area of her life. Barb, we are super practical around here, but
Yes.
I would be remiss if I didn't, you have talked about the spiritual part of this. How do you think doubling down with God, spending time with God every day, you didn't, it's not, oh, I'm doing 30 minutes a day. It's like you just said, hey, it's one of my five. How do you think that that has impacted the practicality of your life and being able to manage your life?
So I'm glad you asked that question. What I do not want someone listening to take away is to think if I really work really hard at my relationship with God, I'll feel better. God,
Mhm.
that's not what God is asking you to do at all. For me, mine actually was simple. Speaking of practical, I called it God morning
Mhm.
because I was in such a hard place for so long. And when I woke up, all of the anxieties of everything happening in my life would rush as even as you know how when you're waking up in the morning and your brain is not fully on, but then you start thinking. Um,
Yeah.
I every worst case disaster that could happen met me before my eyes
Mm.
opened. So I took a note
Yeah.
card and I would write down 5 promises of God every day because some days I couldn't pray. Some days I
Yeah.
just didn't have it in me because all I could do was cry. But I read that card, I put it next to my bed and I taped one on my bathroom mirror. And what that card did was it helped me hold on until I could hold on.
Mm. Okay.
Sometimes we're in a season where we just don't
Yeah.
have it, and God knows this, but we
Yeah.
need to have somebody maybe you've got a friend who's praying for you, and they are helping you hold on until you have the strength to hold on again.
Mm.
And what that allowed me to do is in a world where it's so easy for us to think of worst case scenarios,
Yeah.
it helped me to stay anchored to the fact that not everything was all bad and that I wouldn't always be in that spot, that I
Mm.
could hang on to the belief that God would be with me and he would be for me and he wouldn't fail me, and I sometimes I couldn't believe it myself, but I needed to have something bigger outside of me that could hold on to that, and that was God's promises, and so that card I called God Morning, God Night, and I read that
Mhm.
card for years.
So it was your anchor when everything else was swirling around you. Do
Yep.
you feel like like that was the start of you being able to do your 5?
You
You
know
eventually?
it all kind of worked together. There was no plan
Mm.
one day that I woke up that I said, "I need to have a top 5." I had a spouse who showed up at 7 AM every morning who came through the door completely intoxicated.
Mm.
That's how my life went for many
Yeah.
years. So when I woke up every morning, there was no organization. This did not look
Yeah.
beautiful or perfect. I
Right.
was in survival mode. It just happened that God, in His mercy, led me to Barb. You should take a walk so that you don't say anything stupid.
Oh,
So I would
okay.
start to take a walk. Barb, you should
Oh,
write these 5 things down so that you
yeah.
are not crying when your kids come downstairs for breakfast and there's somebody passed out on the couch. Movie or eating healthy was Barb. Those Snickers bars aren't going to help you. You should
Mm.
probably stop eating those so much and eat a salad. So, everything that I'm sharing with you, these were
Yeah.
basically survival mode that had a spiritual
Mhm.
intervention.
Ooh, okay. A survival mode that had a spiritual intervention. Yes. Because there are certain things you can control and a lot you can't. So
Exactly.
control what you can. I
And that
I love
and Yes,
Go
and
ahead.
that is what I have held on to all of these years. I mean, I've had seasons where one year I had 3 books due in 371 days, plus my travel
Mm.
schedule. And I remember before I said yes to all of it, I just said, "Okay, God, if I'm gonna do this, please give me wisdom. What do you want me to do?" And the impression that I got from God was be faithful in the small things. And so
Mm.
I just made my only commitment were those top 5. And
Oof.
there were days that I cried. There were days when I was exhausted. There were days when I couldn't write, but those top 5 kept me anchored as close to emotional and spiritual regulation and physical health as possible. I got COVID. No, I got COVID the year before. Never mind. But those 5 helped
Mhm.
me stay as regulated as I could even though everything else around me was just wild.
Ugh. Okay. I love this so much. I love the practical coming from the spiritual. And a lot of your spiritual practices were born out of the practical. It's a beautiful thing during a tough time. And that's the material you have for your book, Stronger Than Stress Bible Study. If you're like me, like I am always doing a Bible study. There is always a Bible study. And, sometimes I do it with a group. Sometimes I do it by myself. This is one I've done twice now. And I am so grateful. And that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. Barb, do you have one closing thought before we go?
Yes, thank you. So here's my closing thought. I mentioned, like, we talked a lot about the top five, and we've talked a
Yeah.
lot about control. So my closing thought is, friend, if you're listening and you want to start this journey, it begins with one very vital step, and that is that step of looking at what do you have control over, and what, more importantly, what don't you have control over.
Hmm.
And so the very first practice in the study is a short prayer. And that prayer is, God, I can't, but you can,
Yeah.
and I will let you. And
Oof.
this is, I know it's not. And so,
Yeah.
friend, if you're listening today and you need to start this journey before you can figure out your top five, it's a good to figure out what do you need to let go of, and you can use that prayer to help you to start living in what you can't control, because if you keep trying to control, you're going to take a walk and still be obsessed about control. You're going to work out,
Yeah.
still be obsessed about control. You're going to do all kinds of things, but releasing what you cannot change, what you didn't cause, to God, it will do a shift in your heart that opens up space for you to fill in what you can do in a
Mm.
crazy season.
Guys, there are so many first steps you can take. I really recommend this Bible study. Also, admitting what you can't have control over, just like what Barb said, and try knowing that you do not need to control the uncontrollable. And Barb, thank you for sharing so honestly from your own experience, because I think sometimes people listen and they say, "But they don't know my struggle." And, like, I've never lived with an alcoholic. I
Mm.
so I don't know that struggle, but you do. So thank you so much for sharing so honestly, because it changed everything for you.
It did.
And, your life is beautiful and rich and full. And I wonder, 20 years ago if you had the vision for that. And so, um, friends, if your life is a struggle right now, you feel overwhelmed by everything, take that first step. That would be my encouragement. Take that first step. Barb, thank you for being on here. And friends, thank you for listening. You've been listening to Clutter Free Academy. I'm Kathi Lipp. Now, go live the clutter free life you've always wanted to live.